Hey everyone, it's Whitney. I know I've been gone for a long time. This year got super busy, mostly because I filled my private practice therapy practice. So I've been seeing about 20 clients a week, and with two little kids, I haven't had a ton of time to be making astrology content. So thank you to those of you that are sticking around and have offered support and asked me to come back. We'll see what can happen for 2026. There is a place to find me that I have been able to maintain consistently, and that is a little podcast that I have called Dually Noted. So, dually, as in two, noted as in the astrological nodes. I'll put the link below, but you can find it on anywhere where you get podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and that is linked to a Substack that I have. So you can get those sent directly to your inboxes and listen to them there. So, as part of that, I have been doing forecast episodes, sometimes weekly by myself, and then monthly and yearly with my friend Nicole Stark, who is an astrologer and my former student at IO Astrology. So, this video is our forecast for the year. I'm gonna post it in video form, but you can also listen to the audio over at my podcast, and I'll post the links below. Thanks so much for being here. Hopefully, I'm going to be back to creating and even just uploading astrology content in 2026. It's going to be a crazy year for astrology, and I love connecting with people through that medium. So, hope to see some of you there and then. Happy New Year.
Hello, everyone. This is Whitney Will from Star Hearth Astrology, and I am here today with my friend and colleague, Nicole Stark. Hi, Nicole.
Hey.
And we are going to take on a Herculean task of talking about a crazy year ahead. So, this is our forecast for 2026. We're going to try and get through it in one part. It might be two parts. What a year we have ahead of us. But we thought it was important to break it down quarter by quarter here at the end of 2025 so that you guys have a chance to break out your planners and to have a sense of what might be ahead in personal and public life so that we can get through things together. Yeah, understand what's ahead, prepare, and yeah, just try to be present with ourselves and using astrology as a grounding tool to stabilize us. Yeah. So, welcome, Nicole. Thanks for being here with me.
Like I said, it's, we really picked like a year for the first time of trying to do this. It's going to be interesting, interesting year. This is where we live in interesting times.
For
They think
sure.
it's a curse in certain traditions. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, I was like, okay, this will be a year that people read a lot about in history books. It's such a pivot point in the center of the decade from the before to after. It's such a big turning point in the story of humans and our world right now.
Yeah. I think it's important to know that we've weathered these storms before. So
Absolutely.
it's a useful tool, actually, the fact that we have all of this history to look back on. So I think that's like the most grounding part about using astrology, like in that way, in the mundane way, is to be able to go back and find those patterns, see what's coming up, and then we know a little bit of the outcome sometimes too. Thus far, good has always prevailed, it seems like.
Everything has prevailed.
Humans have prevailed. We're adaptable little creatures.
We're going to talk about the year ahead in both a mundane way, a geopolitical way, and also a personal way. And of course, some people will be having the best years of their life. When we're talking about mundane astrology, we're talking about the astrology of politics and geography and movements of peoples and culture and history. And when we're talking about personal astrology, to some extent, all of our charts are getting hit by that, but it may not be the biggest year ever for everyone. We all have all of our charts distributed in different ways. A momentous year, one of those years where I am willing to bet that people will remember where they were.
Should we just try to get
Yeah,
into it then?
yeah, let's just do it. Okay, so now that we've said that we are getting into it, do we want to name some of the headlines of this year and then take a step back and talk about the close of 2025 so that we have set the scene for how
Yeah.
all of this is going to happen? When Nicole and I are talking about all the big changes this year, we are talking about Saturn and Neptune and Uranus moving back into the signs that they ingressed into in 2025. So Saturn and Neptune moving back into Aries for a long time. They're not going to retrograde back into Pisces anymore. We're talking about Uranus moving into Gemini fully. We're talking about the completion of the exact Saturn-Neptune conjunction. We are talking about a Mars-Uranus conjunction in Gemini, which has huge significance in the history of the United States.
We're talking about eclipse that is changing into Leo and Aquarius, and those just being solar eclipses. A slug of eclipses still happening for Virgo and Pisces, so long. And then a Venus retrograde, I think, which is pretty big news at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Jupiter ingresses into Leo.
We get a fixed sign shift. There's less mutability.
I've been thinking of it
Yeah.
as like that battleship game, and it's like where we're putting all the pieces onto the board, and some pieces are going to go away, other pieces are going to come on, big things are going to change.
And then at the very end of the year, it doesn't happen in 2026, but we enter the shadow of a Mars retrograde that begins really quickly in January of 2027. So we get that. We get the prelude music to that
Yeah.
too, which feels
Yeah.
really potent. So I think we're going to jump in kind of quarter by quarter and try and parse some of that out for everyone. But first, let's check in on where all the planets were at the end of 2026 and kind of some of the stuff we were dealing with in the video version of this. I will actually just pull up the chart so that we can look at that a little bit. As we've been talking about for months, 2026 or 2025 ends with the outer planets in the same positions, in the same signs that they were in at the end of 2025 or 2024. So if you had a return at the end of 2025 to stuff that was coming up at the end of 2024, we have Mercury having fully cleared the shadow of the retrograde that it was in November. We have this kind of super conjunction building with the Sun and Venus and Mars, and soon to be Mercury in Capricorn.
I think those Saturn squares at the end of the year are really important because all the personal planets were just coming up against a wall. And I think that is like everything hits a wall and then everything comes together and starts to push forward in January.
Everything hits Saturn first. Everything hits the wall first, and then it hits Neptune. And so it's like a hit the limit of whatever particular dream or topic or theme or story. And then Neptune can let things go with grace. And so, yeah, there is this kind of endings of lots of things as we head into the new year. Okay, so that's where we are. Let's jump into January, into quarter one. Do you want to start us off? And I'll pull this down, but we can look at more charts.
Okay, so quarter one, that's January through March. We start off with Venus and Mars together. They're with the Sun. They're being reborn at about the same time. And then the party just continues. Mercury comes in January 1st. Mercury's there. We have a full moon, so we start the year in January with a full moon. So just like high energy, a refreshing renewal of these are my values, these are my drives. I want to set the tone for this year, and real urgency about doing things. But then everyone just keeps meeting together with Mars and Mercury there. We get a Mars Mercury, so arguments like fighting. I think Chris Brennan always says fighting words. And all of this, then all that energy pushes into Aquarius, and that's like January going into February. And then February gives us our eclipse, first eclipse in Aquarius in the whole eclipse season, which then dominates the rest of the first quarter. And there are these little moments of conjunctions. I think we have a Mercury retrograde in Pisces go through alongside the eclipse, which meets up with Venus twice in this whole quarter. But I just see it as like the year building up to that first eclipse. So where the just the momentum and the energy. So that major first turning point that we're getting February 17th is sure to be big.
Yeah, and then we have that storyline building up. We also have Neptune back into Aries at the end of January and Saturn back into Aries mid-February, and then they build up to their conjunction, which happens
February
the exact.
20th.
So that we've got these two storylines building really to mid-February, and then we're in topsy-turvy eclipse land with Mercury, our thinker, our parsing out stuff, our analyst, retrograde in the sign of its fall. So
It's just
yeah, looking at
chaos.
the year, it really is looking at the year ahead. I felt like this last year too. Quarter one, I guess you get the craziest quarter of the year out of the way first. It's not out of the way because it's going to color the whole thing. But yeah, quarter one of 2026 does not pull punches, like you said. We start out building towards everything that starts happening in mid-February.
And you can
Yeah.
feel that now, like where we are when we're recording this, and you can see what's going to happen. What I find interesting is we feel like we're on the precipice of something already when we start the year. And we all know that everybody's talking about bubble bursting and the economy and wars brewing, ceasefires. Are they going to hold, not hold? All of these questions are already up in the air when we start the year. And so that's why I think there's this fresh energy to tackle those things right away. It's also a huge year for our leadership, not necessarily the president, but for Congress especially. So those people who we're going to get those texts all year long about it's an election year. So we all know what that means, advertisements and commercials and texts and stuff. So I think there is real incentive leaders to do things, to get things done, because I think there's just a lot of pieces that they're tie up, get done with the healthcare bill. We get another shutdown possibility first thing in January 30th is that's the vote for that. The House comes back, the Senate comes back. It just piles on. And then the eclipses come. And it's also big for world leaders too. Like the Republican, there's so many Aquarius suns in the Republican House. Even Mike Johnson, he's Aquarius sun, Leo moon. Our president's a Leo rising. So that's why I think, at least in the mundane world, things just seem really chaotic and crazy because our world leaders have these prominent placements that are getting activated. And they're the ones that are, even if we don't always feel it on our day to day, it's looming in the background of existence for us in our personal lives and in our relationships, in disagreements that you might have, different values. And yeah, I just see people coming into the year dug in or ready to dig in.
And I
That's
think,
right.
and all of this stuff happening in the background, what I see in my work is that it really affects our baseline of anxiety and depression. When we have an elevated baseline of those things, everything that happens feels bigger because our baseline is less regulated. We have a deeper sense of the instability of the world, and it's harder to stay grounded. And I think as you're naming the election year, also looking at just the collection of elements that we have, is that it's bold. Like, this is not, oh, everything is chaotic and everyone's trying to get it under control. This is not about getting under control. It may be
No,
the attempt to be controlling, but it's not about, oh, okay, we're going to come back to a calm space. The energy is going to move to a calm space.
no. This is
No,
Game of Thrones, and our leaders are Littlefinger. Just chaos is a ladder, except for that can't work for everybody. So some people are going to get knocked off the ladder. Come on now. But yeah. And the thing, too, I think about it is that what also presses the anxiety is that it feels so out of control when there's constant turnover. It's when you work in a workplace and there's just like constant leadership turnover, and you're like, can we please? I just want to come in, clock in, do my job, keep people happy, myself happy, my team
right.
happy, and go home.
And even it
Yeah.
doesn't even have to be the leadership turnover. There's like
Mm-hmm.
HR turnover. And so you can't do anything because they don't know what they're doing in any place. And then the whole reason why we're here is something that we never even actually get to. And so maybe as we're talking about this, the threading the needle of this year is holding on to a core sense of who you are amidst all of this, to hold
Yeah.
on to values and a sense of groundedness. And
We do get the opportunity. I think that like the Venus and Mars being exterior Cazimi to the sun and in right away early January and conjoining each other, it's like harmony between the sexes. We can each one Venus representing our values and Mars representing our will, and it's in Capricorn, which likes to take a long time. So maybe starting the year, getting that in and just taking a long view of whatever your personal ambition or
yeah,
personal wish is, and just find your North Star early on and then try to keep your attention on that, even as all of this turmoil boils up and over in the geopolitical spheres.
the one thing that I think about that, yes, we get a Mars conjunction, we get one about every 2 years. So while not a super rare thing, it is significant. It harkens back to the retrograde that we had in Capricorn at the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022, where Mars was also there and they were together there with Pluto. The one thing about them conjoining with the sun is that they're both under the beams of the sun. And
So,
so it's like we're moving towards that sense of it, but it's almost like we get a sense of that somewhere deep inside. It may not be as obvious or as articulated in our mind. There's something that is a little bit obscured.
you get a little brief, like when they enter the heart of the sun, right? You get
Yeah.
that moment, but then too, it's going to go back, and then they're going to reappear as evening stars for most of the year, which is also interesting, right? Considering the vibe of the year to have them in a more peaceful mindset, a more maintaining mindset. I don't know. That's how I think of, I guess, in a birth chart, like morning star phases are more about fighting in battle, and then the evening star phases are more, they're going to be prominent once they
Ooh.
come out, but I think there's something different about the energy. I haven't been able to pinpoint that against the backdrop of other things happening in the year.
Mars
Yeah.
actually is being reborn. Mars is in old, like ancient warrior phase right now, about to reset the Mars cycle with the
Yeah.
conjunction with the sun. So
Great. That
actually,
makes so much more sense. I was
yeah,
so
I was
confused.
like,
I was like,
wait,
how
hold the phone.
do I reconcile
No,
this?
Mars is
Okay, yeah, great. Mars full battle mode. Okay.
so Venus is okay, whatever her whole journey was about with her retrograde in Mars's sign in Aries as part of 2024, that she's making peace with and becoming the evening star as she prepares to go retrograde this fall of 2026 in Scorpio. But Mars is getting a reset of the Mars cycle, which means he's about to be reborn in the sign of his exaltation, doing Mars stuff. Mars,
The fiery one
the
in the
fiery
morning.
one.
Yeah.
What a Mars year it's going to be. But yeah, I think these first two lunations that we get, and again, we'll break this down more. We'll do monthly forecasts where we get into the nitty-gritty, but really the first two, the full moon on January 3rd and the new moon on January 18th, are both very involved in the moon is opposite Venus and Mars. That Venus and Mars conjunction culminates on the 7th, and then the new moon is together with Mercury and Venus, and Mars has just stepped into Aquarius, but still very close to that new moon. These lunations are colored in this Capricorn thing, which starts out the year looking for what's practical and knowing that we're taking on a lot. Capricorn does not ever think that it's like not taking on a lot. We have clear eyes and stepping into the project. So then moving forward, yes, we have that third Mercury Mars conjunction in Capricorn. We had one in Scorpio, we had one in Sag as part of the retrograde at the end of 2025. And now we have one in Capricorn where Mars is exalted. Here's what we're doing. Here's how we're going to negotiate the budget bill and the healthcare bill. And I think that full moon in Cancer, right, as a positive point, the US has put through affirming supportive healthcare bills with Jupiter in Cancer. And so a Cancer full moon right there, that gives me a little bit of hope about the Affordable Care Act or what it becomes and how it's going to support people. So hopefully that comes through.
Yeah, I think so. And then even the deadline for it is like January 30th, which they'll probably take all that time. That's also a Cancer moon day, which is interesting. I don't think there's a lot of incentive for them to, I think there's a lot of incentive for them to keep the government functioning to address issues. There might be a lot of fighting about how to do that. But I think hopefully Venus's presence there and Jupiter's presence offer a buoy towards compromise in diplomatic endeavors, at least within that context.
Yeah, about that one in particular. And then it's at the end of January when Neptune goes back into Aries and begins some of these bigger storylines in earnest. There's been lots said about Neptune and Aries. Do you have anything you want to make sure we highlight right in this moment?
Yeah, there's just been so much said about it in a historical context. I think of Neptune as this illusionary, dreamy, confusing, confounding thing that then gets into the sign that's all about, it's like the most cardinal of all the cardinals in the sense that it's cardinal fire, wanting to pull things up off the ground, wanting these dreams to get off of the ground, not necessarily be grounded or be anything solid, but just initiated. I think I once heard a financial astrologer say that Neptune in fire signs is linked to inflation. I don't really know, but we've certainly been seeing that on the wobble, maybe in the ingress or something. If you're a visionary person, an artist person, a particularly Neptunian person, I think it might feel unnatural to you, but it could be a good time to those dreams slowly coming true over the next, what is it, like 14 years?
Neptune is in Aries until 2038. It's a ways out there when you view it like that. And it's also been a long transit in natal astrology and personal astrology of Neptune through whatever your Pisces house is. And now it's solidly in a different space. I'm super happy to have it out of my second house of personal finances. I'm excited to have it in my third house of, among other things, writing. Maybe my writing won't become more regular, but maybe more esoteric. That would be super fun.
Yeah.
I will enjoy that.
Me too. I'm excited to have it out of my seventh house and Saturn now.
Yes.
Oh my God. I've learned some lessons, but it would be nice to just have a non-confusing potential partners show up in my life, and I just have the dreaminess go into this sort of other space, mental. I have hopes for self-forgiveness in the 8th house, an inventive sex life.
But at least it's out of an angular house, regardless. And then
So I think
Saturn,
that'll feel really good for some people.
to have it, right? It's every ingress is an egress of somewhere else. So it enters new signs, there's new things, but there's also things that just get to be put down. And so Saturn on the 13th of February, the day before Valentine's Day, Saturn moves into Aries, leaves Pisces.
What is that? Is that for Valentine's Day? I'm with Austin Coppock.
Saturn moves into Aries, starts making things happen with, there's so much pressure with Saturn. And I think that Saturn can be experienced as external pressure. And as you say, it's almost okay. So if Neptune is watery, is entering a fire sign, we're steaming something. And when we bring in Saturn, we put it in the Instant Pot, right? Like it's no longer, it's not just steaming, it's in a pressure cooker. So we're going to try and tenderize it real fast and try not to have it explode and destroy the house.
Saturn energy is opposite to Aries energy.
The planet is traditionally in its fall in Aries. And part of what you said, like Aries is the most cardinal, but when we're talking about something like Saturn, that is always looking towards the end of things, always trying to feel the limits on things and impose limits, right? You either get, at least in my research and my experience and understanding, you either the weight of Saturn, meaning that Aries can't ever get off the ground because Saturn is shooting it down. Aries is going to function on inspiration. And if Saturn is like, nope, we don't get enough sparks to start a fire. Or we start the fire and then Saturn's, you have to finish whatever you started. But Aries is a sprint, not a marathon. It's a recipe for burnout. It's a recipe for breakdown because we can't sustain it. And that kind of Saturn in fire signs can be pretty dogmatic. And it's not necessarily just like the task that has to keep going, but the idea has to keep going. We can also think about it in the fact that Saturn's in its exaltation and Libra is the sign that is about things being in balance, which means things in their proper roles, things at their proper size, things not getting so big that they're throwing the whole system way out of balance. And so Saturn can't do that. Or Saturn, right? Like the slowness of Saturn, always trying to play catch up with Aries. Here's a quick fix. Here's a quick fix. But the whole system is not, it's not getting fixed.
Yeah, I also noticed too Saturn in fire signs, particularly like Aries and Leo, they have that battleground goes into your inner monologue. I've just noticed that there's maybe like a false sense of duty to something or false bravado where you can project externally a confidence that you don't have internally because you've got a lot of things to work through before you can really have that true confidence. I feel like the ingress is always the hardest. And as we sat with Saturn for a couple of years, I think the fruit of the labor starts to be more noticeable. So at least that's what I felt like while Saturn is in Pisces and wrapping up that story, going, okay, I'm ready for a new story. I know that it's going to be difficult, but I'm interested.
Yeah, you're seeing the fruits right now as we're sitting at the end of 2025 of Saturn in Pisces and naming that Saturn ingresses. We always experience hard stuff first because the story of a Saturn transit is the long work. It feels like everything starts happening at once. At that Saturn ingress, we also get Mercury enters the shadow of its retrograde a couple days before on February 11th. And if we count eclipse season as happening from a week before the first eclipse to a week after the second eclipse, then we enter eclipse season on February 10th. So we have a lot of storylines overlapping right in there.
And things reaching that fever pitch. We've been dealing with Saturn and Neptune kind of moving in synchronicity, coming close, but not quite, moving back, coming forward. And now we just reached the peakness of that energy. I've been seeing it as like the propaganda machine, the mass manipulation, this fight for distorting, not being able to know what's real, what's not real, the confusion of that sort of reaching this peak point
In eclipse season with Mercury Pisces, right? We are poised on the edge of, it's almost like there's chaos happening, but part of the chaos is just the confusion of what's real and who to believe. And
I almost wonder if Saturn just finally coming over and cooking all that up also doesn't just, there's some kind of snap of too, because it's the, we might be confused, but I feel like there's some truth that like emerges at the same time. It's just, if Saturn is reality coming into all of this, we can no longer fake numbers. That doesn't work anymore. We can't keep saying we're going to do something and not do it. Yeah, I think that there's, and it's Saturn is a ruler of the eclipse. So I don't know. I think that there's, I would, if you have stocks, I would protect them in this moment. I think it'll be a good time just overall for crypto, but like when you see this amount of turbulence, it always starts to affect it. There's no way it can't not affect us in some giant way. And I always see with Mercury retrograde conjunct, I always think of that as money changing hands when it's retrograde. I think that this, as far as in the mundane world, yeah, this is huge. The sun, this is an Aquarius stepping down. Like this is a huge on the Aquarius agenda, whatever that's been, I think, or a major turning point in being able to move that agenda forward. I don't know. There's like both ways I can see it playing out.
yeah, that it's co-occurring. So now you're naming that it's co-occurring with the February 17th solar eclipse in Aquarius that happens at 28 degrees of Aquarius. It is our first eclipse in Aquarius since 2018, or at least thereabouts.
Yeah, it was a South Node
And
eclipse.
there are so many references back to 2018 this year.
Oh my God, think about what was going on in 2018. Trade war tensions with China, markets failing. What's interesting to me, because I looked at the charts of some things, at least for Bitcoin, like in 2018, it was having a nodal opposition in its chart. And then this year, it's having a nodal return in its chart. So I have a hard time. I think like this, like these tremblings, it's like it's pushing us further into a digital currency. But before we get there, I think that there's just a lot of volatility. But I think that's kind of the overall trend, at least from what I'm seeing. So
yeah, also in personal ways. We've got Venus retrograding in the same this year. She'll retrograde in Scorpio like she did in the fall of 2018. We're building up to a Mars retrograde that even though it doesn't start until 2017, it happens opposite the place that it was happening in 2018. It was retrograde in Aquarius in 2018. It's going to be retrograde in Leo. Uranus completing its time in Taurus that it began in 2018. We've got our first Aquarius eclipse. And as you said, it's a solar eclipse. Solar eclipses happen on new moons. They are supercharged new beginnings. While the North Node is still in Pisces, this is still a North Node eclipse. So it's like pulling the focus to Aquarius. What has been happening or not happening? What has been overlooked since then. That South eclipse in 2018 that happened in Aquarius was the one where I came out of the astrology closet on that eclipse. It happened right on my ascendant. That was like, I started writing for the newspaper. I talked on the radio. I like fully came out of, and I started giving readings all in that eclipse. So we'll see what happens with the solar eclipse in my first house in the midst of all of this. And that brings us into eclipse season, which of course changes the stories. But this eclipse season that happens in February and March straddles two axes. So we get a solar eclipse Aquarius and we get a lunar eclipse in Virgo. And when that happens in the summer, we'll get the solar eclipse in Leo and the lunar eclipse Pisces. So we're in between the Pisces Virgo eclipses and the Leo Aquarius eclipses.
Leo being the domicile of the sun, Aquarius being its fall, and then the yin signs getting the lunar eclipses.
And that's true for this eclipse cycle. All of the Pisces and Virgo eclipses were lunar eclipses, except for one that happened at the anaretic degree of Virgo opposite Saturn.
Yeah,
It was like the least solar powered eclipse you could
yeah,
possibly have. It was like a kind of like too little, too late. Nice
yeah,
try on the south node. Like nothing was getting started there.
yeah.
And it straddled eclipse seasons with the Aries and Libra eclipses. And yeah, and with these Leo Aquarius ones, it's like, how much do we have to wrap up in that area? I guess a lot with Neptune and Saturn finally leaving, but we're trying to
Yeah, it's like,
jumpstart these engines with solar
yeah, with
eclipses.
that energy just skipped. Virgo and Pisces really, it's just, to me, it's just, they're just bleeding. That's how I feel as Virgo rising. At least it's mutable. At least we're better at navigating those challenges. But I would prefer not to navigate these stories for 2.5 years. It's been extra long.
Yeah, you're right. It's like two
which
and
which makes the Leo and Aquarius very short. As you notice that I peaked into the next year, and we already start doing Capricorn Cancer things next year. So it's this year even more like, it's already that it's like supercharged solar eclipses, but they're also like, it's just compacted
yeah,
into this year.
we got a
Um,
super extended one and then a super short one.
so
Yeah.
the changes that it brings will have to be swift and momentous and monumental, like, because that this is its chance to make those major turning points.
You're getting the eclipses out of your first and seventh. I'm getting them all in my first and seventh. So we will stay tuned for all of that. But yeah, so we're dealing with whatever Saturn and Neptune is bringing on a political level. We're dealing with it on a personal level. We've got eclipses that are changing the sets, changing the stories, bringing about those momentous beginnings and endings. Often I find through insight rather than through action necessarily, right? The happening of the eclipse on a personal level is often like, oh, now I can see this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm looking at this thing. And so that solar eclipse in Aquarius, bringing that light to your Aquarius house, wherever people have their Aquarius house, of, oh, okay, we got to check out this thing. We've been receiving energy at the beginning of Aquarius through Pluto being there, but now this one is at the very end of Aquarius. So we're also looking at that stuff, what's
Yeah.
going on there. And then we have a lunar eclipse on March 3rd. And wait, Mercury stationed retrograde somewhere at the end of February. Yeah, February
Yeah.
25th. So we get that kind of right in the midpoint between eclipses, being like, hold the phone. And that
Yeah.
Mercury in Pisces, Mercury is in its fall in Pisces, which doesn't mean there's anything wrong with Mercury. It just doesn't do, it's just a neurodivergent Mercury. It's just doing
Yeah.
Mercury things in a very different way.
Yeah. It's
And
more like imaginative and artistic rather than trying to parse things out.
this is
Mm-hmm.
Mercury, the songwriter. And so Mercury is writing songs about the past and trying to process things in a different way, which is good. They're in the midst of this chaos. There is a little bit of, okay, Jesus, take the wheel, or whatever palatable God term you like. Surrender. Surrender. You're not going to understand it until the dust settles a little bit anyway. You may not even understand it then,
Yeah.
but you can still experience it. You can keep your eyes open through what's happening. And then we get that lunar eclipse on March 3rd at about 13 degrees of Virgo.
Yeah, my Mars.
Right on my sun.
So yay.
So it's going to be a Marsy year for you too. You can grab
Yeah.
that. Or
Yeah.
it's almost
I
like you're like, wait, what do I have in my hand? I have this tool. I can use this tool.
It's very resourceful. That's the thing that I will give my Mars in Virgo at being good at. Not great for inner dialogue, good for navigating things in a practical, resourceful way. So that'll be good. Yeah, I'm in a first house perfection year too. Yeah, so it means Sun and Mars are also charged. If you take, I was just looking at balance perfection, how he does it, and it's not just your time lord for the year, but it's also the planets that are in the house. And as I was reflecting, I was going, oh my God, that is so true. I have
Yeah,
never seen it more true than I have right now.
but that's exciting.
Yeah, it's a turning point. It's a portal for change, whatever. It's temporary. Every single time I think I come out of them like a little more stoic than I was before, which is nice.
I find that the moon in Virgo is, and I say this as a natal Virgo moon, so that is maybe part of it. But when the moon is in Virgo, even if it's in an eclipse, there is a sense of, I got this. I can figure it out. I can find the pieces. I can put
Yeah.
them back together. I can organize this. And yeah, so sometimes that eclipse energy is, no, you actually do have this.
It really just depends on like your relationship, what's going on there, your relationship to those archetypes, what's playing out, how you think about it is really important. So your thoughts color your reality, and your language creates your reality too. These are just times where whatever's going on just really comes into focus. You get those insights and stuff. This lunation is sextile to Jupiter.
It's got some buoyancy right there with
Mm-hmm.
Jupiter.
I'm trying to think too, like around this time, Jupiter will then station direct on March 10th, less than a week after that lunation,
Yeah,
about a week after the lunation. So we end eclipse season a week later and Jupiter stations direct. That seems good
potentially very
with us.
realizing things can move forward again. We've come to a resolution, as you said, with eclipses. It's always temporary, as life is, but for the moment, I'm looking forward to that. I am in a Jupiter perfection year.
Keeps going with that, like March 20th, Mercury
Mm.
stations direct.
And then 10 days later, March 30th, we get Venus into her home sign of Taurus, which is also, right, gives us the Earth we've been missing since everybody left Capricorn.
We're taking baths, we're doing face masks, we're eating good food, we're taking care of
Yeah.
our bodies, plants are growing. I
Yeah.
think that'll be a good sign. Farmers have had kind of a bad time these last couple springs, so maybe a Venus ingress
Into
too.
Taurus. So that brings us to quarter two. We've navigated those big three things all at once: Saturn, Neptune, eclipses, and a Mercury retrograde in Pisces. And for people that have mutable signs rising, I always think of when I'm looking out at a year of Mercury retrogrades, I'm always looking at the ones that happen in the angular houses as being like, okay, this is my top Mercury retrograde, all other things being equal. And so mutable signs, done it. You did the mutable retrograde.
I think I wrote that too later on, that it's just like the first half, like the end of this year into this first quarter is the most challenging, I think, for mutable signs. So that's like the craziest quarter ever. Maybe I think it's in the running. This
Yeah,
one, quarter two, I think a little softer.
they're all crazy, but I think we get more softness. You like, there's that full moon in Libra with
I like
Venus and
that.
Taurus. Yeah.
A couple days.
Mars goes into Aries pretty quickly
Mm-hmm.
and then has an exact conjunction with Saturn on the 19th. That feels like a really big deal to me because
Mm-hmm.
they can join each other every 2 years. It was a Mars-Saturn conjunction, the first one in Aquarius that brought about social distancing at the beginning of the pandemic. It happened in March of 2020. We've seen the like, right, as the two malefics, the two planets that tend to symbolize where the problems are coming from. When they meet up together, that tends to be pretty profound. That tends to give us a sign to put a pin in, okay, what's going to happen? Now, when it happened in Aquarius in 2020, and obviously we've had some since then. Now, this one happens in Mars's domicile with Saturn in its fall. So we're probably not going to see the most morally upstanding Saturn in
No.
this version. I think it leans into, if we're talking about Aries, there is some overt violence to that sign, which can be very creative in some contexts. But this one looks like we've got Neptune in the air too. There is not a lot of natural limits to violence.
Yeah, I agree. Mercury's there too, bringing out the argumentative nature. The lovely thing we have happening in mid-end of April through June are all the SCOTUS rulings. So they've been in hearings, having hearing after hearing. So at this time period, we're going to start probably hearing some rulings come down that will have major impacts potentially on various parts of our lives and on the elections coming up.
And this Mars-Saturn conjunction happens within a day of a Mercury-Mars conjunction. Aries, I think, yeah.
Embedded in a new moon in Aries too. That new moon's April 17th. So it's a lunar month of Mars in Saturn.
Now we've got a similar stellium in terms of numbers of planets, bringing emphasis to a sign. But instead of the Capricorn stellium that we had at the beginning of the year or the Aquarius stellium right after, we've got an Aries stellium with both malefics.
It starts out contentiously. Venus tried. She didn't
She
succeed.
tried. We had a moment. We had a moment at the end of March, right?
We took a bath. We finally had
We took
time.
one bath. And then right after that, on the 23rd, we get a Venus conjunction with Uranus. Venus did this super weird thing in 2025 where she conjoined every planet right before it ingressed. And
Oh,
this is a
fun.
continuation. She's conjoining Uranus at the very end, at the threshold of Taurus. She moves in to Gemini, and then 2 days later, we get Uranus in Gemini. I feel like April takes over from March, the music calms down a little bit, and then April we get this like whole new overture about action and boldness. We're deciding, okay, we had some kind of insight at the end of eclipse season. Now we're deciding which battles we're going to fight in April collectively, and if you have heavy cardinal or a lot of Aries personally as well.
Yeah, then Uranus and Gemini. I think we should spend time on that one.
Yeah.
It's such a big deal, I feel like.
It's such a big deal, and we've had a taste of it. So if people think back to it went into Gemini in July, so it was July, August, September, October that we had Uranus in Gemini. I think on a personal level, Uranus feels like restlessness. I think where Uranus is in our charts natally, we can't ever sit still. And so then when Uranus moves into a new space, it brings that I have to release some of this energy because I'm just going crazy sitting right here in this space.
Yeah, I associate it too with that restlessness of an entrepreneur, sort of executive type thing, where there's a will and an urge to be in charge of your autonomy and yourself. It's about your selfhood. In Taurus, right, in the earth sign, it may have destabilized some things, but in Gemini, it's going to bring all of that to a thought space, like a mutable air space, like lots of ideas, lots of supercharged speech, of assertion of selfhood. We definitely saw that pivot that it made just momentarily. We saw a bunch of people getting really firm about their beliefs and the polarity of that too, like just Gemini being the most dual.
I think I see in Gemini the value of pluralism. I don't know if it's because it can have that duality, but Gemini is the sign of curiosity. Uranus trine Pluto in Aquarius, which I think gives it a little bit more of that. I believe what I believe, and I'm going to assert my right to say it, and I'm going to say it to the death,
Yeah.
literally for some people. And also, I don't care what happens. Like this, whatever is happening right now has to change. So I imagine that some of the stuff that comes out of the Saturn-Mars conjunction that comes out of this will be intolerable to many people.
Yeah.
And we will start seeing Uranus and Gemini in terms of I do not care what this level of chaos destroys.
Yeah, it does. This one, it does scare me. And I think you're right that it's really just like Pluto lending that energy in. But this is when, right, August 10th, in the middle of the eclipse season, Uranus and Gemini, that's when Charlie Kirk, that's when that
Yeah,
happened,
totally.
And we
Totally.
saw, like, for the first time, I think we've had people whisper about civil war here and there, but that was the first time where I really felt like the word civil war dominated the airwaves. And of course, it is a repetition of the Civil War time period.
For both Neptune and
Yeah.
Uranus,
Mm-hmm.
Neptune hasn't been in Aries since the Civil War. Uranus has been back to Gemini for World War II. So we have this very potent ingress personally and historically, especially for the US.
It's just crazy. It's brought some good things at the end of it, though, not in the beginning.
We work through the energy. We move through some stuff. There is more liberation, both personally and collectively. As my dad says, freedom isn't free. But Uranus may be championing things. A rising tide lifts all boats. It's not only lifting one voice, it's everybody. Everybody feels like this. I feel like I got a supercharged taste of this personally because 0 degrees of Gemini is my IC. And so Uranus was just parked there
Uh,
into this ingress. And Uranus will be in Gemini until 2033. So, and that one marks the last of these outer planets fully moving in to their new signs
and it just sends the shockwave.
into all
That's
of
what
that. And it
Uranus.
reinvigorates
Yeah.
that they're all an aspect to each other. It reinvigorates like Uranus is going to touch into Pluto again. It's trying to Pluto, it's sextile to Neptune and Saturn for a bit, at least by sign.
Grand air trine energy, like that won't really happen. Every time the moon maybe moves through Libra, you might get that now or later in the year when things move into Libra. But yeah, like we've had all these water trines like in the last year, and then this year is all air trine. So it's like the emotional processing of last year now gets translated into thinking, think tanks.
The idea of the technologists that AI is going to mean that none of us have to work, right? Like, what's that going to look like? That somehow that's going to solve the wealth disparity that has existed for forever and is getting worse. They're going to
Yeah,
have to
that's
solve
definitely
that
not gonna
problem.
make that work.
So again, these explosion of ideas and things to think about and what it means for personal and collective liberation and what freedom of speech looks like.
The protests will be interesting around this time. That's what I'm looking at. Especially with Venus there. Like she's such like a cultural icon for us. Like Venus with Uranus in Gemini, just really loud value.
And she was
Yeah.
loud, right? When we were having eclipses in Gemini and a Venus retrograde in Gemini in 2020, that was George Floyd, Breonna
Mm-hmm.
Taylor protests happened.
Yeah.
And so now we get more. We get Uranian, we get a superhuman social planet pushing so much pressure into there.
Yeah. Maybe that's just the beginning, right? That's just
Yeah,
April,
it's
guys.
just the beginning.
You
So
know?
then May is different and June is different, right? Of course, all
Yeah.
these things are still going to be happening, right? We still
Yeah.
get, but like May is fairly quiet. We get a Pluto stationing retrograde. It made it all the way to 5 Aquarius. It's going to go back. But
Yeah.
the thing to watch for is the Mars-Pluto square that happens at the very end on May 25th. That seems pretty incendiary. Mars and Taurus. So at least that's Mars and Taurus is a little bit more reserved, squaring Pluto in Aquarius. Not the hugest month, given everything that we've just talked about.
There's a blue moon. I
Fun.
don't know what that means.
2 full moons that occur in the same calendar month.
I'm sure people will be talking about it.
They'll be like, ah, yeah, we'll see all of the like half astrology, half astronomy articles popping up. And then June, Nicole has made the very bold claim that, or not the bold claim, the shy suggestion that June may be the softest month.
Yes,
Um,
maybe, except for the end of it. But yes, it's what
yeah.
it is that Venus, isn't this Venus in
Yeah, Jupiter conjunction in Cancer.
on the
Everyone's
9th? Yeah.
there's some softness to that, right? We have a Venus Pluto opposition, like in the context of everything that's happening and in the context of the year. I think you're so right. My biggest kind of thing that happens this year, and we don't spend a ton of time talking about Chiron, but I am thinking about Chiron this month moving into Taurus in June, on June 19th. It'll retrograde back into Aries for a little bit, but again, back to 2018. Chiron ingressed into Aries in 2018. And I think when we're doing natal astrology, Chiron is the wound often. It's the wound, it's our place where we have the capacity to become the wounded healer because it's something that goes so deep that we may not have it fully healed in our lifetime or ever. We're the teacher in that space. But in contrast, I think that transiting Chiron is bringing the medicine to wherever it's transiting. I see it as the healer. I'm thinking of Chiron and Taurus and us identifying at the beginning, like all of the planets are in fire and air. And here we have the medicine of the earth. We have the most fixed sign. We have the most grounded sign in the zodiac. And we have the healer moving into that space. I also think of the Chiron return of everybody that natally has Chiron in Taurus, right? That happens right about at the age of 50. And I think of all the Gen Xers that have Chiron in Taurus, and I've seen it show up in wounding around food. And I've also seen it show up in their knowledge of herbalism and this kind of like herbalism revolution that
Yeah, you're right.
happened. I feel like they hold that. And so I think it's pointing to the medicine in these chaotic times of connecting with nature, staying grounded in your body, using the senses to ground you.
Yes, I am so looking forward to this because I do agree with you that it's definitely the medicine, but I just wonder if all signs aren't created equal when it comes to Chiron, or perhaps placements.
Yeah.
That ingress into Aries for me was probably one of the worst episodes of my adulthood in 2018, into this sort of intimate space in the 8th house for me. And that has been really challenging this whole time. But in Taurus, I've been looking forward to it for that same reason. It's like my 9th house. And I think through this whole process of Chiron in Aries, maybe it's because I'm not the most naturally confident person, that whatever has been going on in my life in the theme of Chiron and Aries, now that we're starting to wrap that story up, I'm so different. Like I am so changed. That's 8th house too. But yeah, then when you get into Taurus, I feel like you can do something with that energy maybe too. So just speaking for all the people who have had a hard time, or maybe Chiron just in fire signs are just a little more, I don't know, they burn you maybe a little more. But yeah, I think we will need the medicine of the earth as a farmer. I'm so grateful for all their mentorship. So I hope that maybe that will give us a little more focus there starting now.
And like I said, it will be there for a couple months. It's going to retrograde back out in August, come back next year, and then be there until 2033. Yeah, I think that means that this is, based on what you just said, this is farm girl summer.
Oh, yeah. Yes, Victory Garden,
Victory
farm girl.
garden summer. Yeah. Take care of your communities. Take care of your people. Give them your tomatoes. Like
Yeah,
tomatoes as
if
medicine.
you were looking for a way to get through this year,
Start a garden.
start a garden. And I'm
Yeah.
not just saying that because I work in a nursery and a farm.
You can say it because of that.
I could say it. Come buy all the plants from me. No. Yeah.
Farming has been such a healing place for us.
Yeah, there's just nothing like it.
There's nothing like it.
The soil has antidepressant properties. So it's been proven. If
Yeah.
things can still be proven, it's been proven. So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there, I think.
Yeah.
A really nice, a little bit of a softer June. I think we may still get some, at the end, maybe some more rigmarole.
So we
That's a
get,
word. Mars prods the nodes right there
yeah,
at the end of June.
which is poking the story along. And also we get Mercury stations retrograde. It goes into the shadow on June 12th. It'll station retrograde there on one of the last days of the quarter. It's retrograde in Cancer. So cardinal people, we're looking at you for this maybe being the most impactful Mercury retrograde. I also see it as like potentially a review of whatever Jupiter was doing in Cancer. Jupiter is going to leave the same day Mercury stations retrograde. It's going to leave Cancer. So Mercury's kind of doing the retrospective as Jupiter moves into Leo. Jupiter in Leo is honestly one of my favorite placements
Mm-hmm.
in astrology because of the joy. It just is the most potent joy, maybe also exuberant, maybe also enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Jupiter and Leo native conjunct Mercury. It's not great at moderation, but it is great at, I feel like one of the greatest privileges has been to sit with people and look at their astrology and find new threads that just glow with golds about why each of us is here and being able to like have that in my seventh house and give that back to people. That's what I care about doing more than anything. And Jupiter in Leo is just, yeah.
And like we need that. We need that confident boost. Things can't be all bad all the time. There's always something good. It's just true. Everything exists in this duality. All of my favorite people I've dated have had Jupiter in Leo.
Oh, really?
It didn't last, but it was super fun.
Yeah.
They're very boisterous. Maybe they talk a little bit. There's big talk, I think, sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Exaggeration for sure. Yeah, no, there's definitely a ton of downsides
There's stuff. But you
to,
feel really good.
yeah, but it's fun and there is
Yeah.
joy in it. There is exuberance, there is enthusiasm with Jupiter and Leo. I also find that Jupiter transits, I feel like when you're first learning astrology, Jupiter transits are sold to you. Santa Claus comes. Jupiter is just like Santa with a big bag of presents and dumps them out in whichever house it's transiting. And I have never experienced anything like that. That is not what Jupiter transits look like or feel like in terms of, yeah, anything that I know. I find Jupiter to be like the philosopher comes home and is, what is this? What is this? And if you're getting more opportunities or you're getting an expansion in the area where Jupiter is transiting, it's because you're paying attention to it more and you're asking more questions. And so it's actually like a lot of work, and it may be work that like pays off quickly. You're like, oh, okay, now I'm paying attention to this thing. What can I do here? How do I feel better in this area of my life? You have to be participating in an active way.
Which is true of all of this. But yeah, I think too, it's also just a little bit of luck too. So it's
luck.
like, and if you think, so like something grazes you instead of taking you out, where maybe
Yeah.
it would have taken you out. So there's a little bit of
Yeah.
protection, a little bit of supportive, stabilizing energy coming in. But that doesn't, it's not, it's just like abundant shower of gold. Although I think we are going to see a lot of gold with
Oh,
Donald
yes.
Trump. It's just gold to the extreme, to the point of tackiness.
The
We know it's
ballroom.
showing.
The
Yeah,
ballroom.
the ballroom.
And that's one way to understand is when the benefics are in good places or whatever, right? You do have to engage with them. Opportunity knocks, but you don't have to open the door. Whereas the malefics, like Mars and Saturn, they are going to break down your door. You cannot
Yeah.
like not do them, or you can for a time, and it's just going to get. But yeah, Jupiter and Leo, it's going to come in. It's going to try and upgrade wherever your Leo space is. But that's going to depend on what you're starting with, too.
How much work have you done in that zone?
Yeah,
How much?
probably not a
Right.
ton recently because the last big thing we had happening in Leo was Venus retrograde in, when was that? Summer of.
23
Oh,
this
yeah,
year,
you're
thanks.
right. Yeah, we did
Yeah.
have a Mars retrograde in Leo and Cancer a
So
year
that's
ago.
this
So,
could be like
okay.
nice.
Yeah. And then we'll have it in there for a year. The first thing that it's going to do when it enters, and this is the vibe of all of every fixed sign ingress, is it's going to oppose Pluto, or depending on the sign, it's going to make hard aspects with Pluto. So that's like Jupiter walks in the doors that it like deals with
Yeah.
Pluto first thing, but then the rest of the time. And that's quarter 2. And Mercury's moving backwards, and Jupiter's on to new spaces. Now, quarter 3. Quarter 3, yeah, we're gonna see. We're gonna get April part 2.
Ugh. This is where that Jupiter ingress is so fascinating to me. It opposes Pluto right away. It's like Pluto just being this power dynamic, and then just this being Trump, and then I'm just setting that context for the first big thing that happens is Mars conjoins Uranus in Gemini in July.
Yeah.
And that's our July 4th.
That's our 4th of July. Mars had gone into Gemini on June 28th. So at the very end, it's starting to build. We get this exact conjunction is super potent in the history of the United States. It's in the chart of the history of the United States. And that's what astrologers are tracking when they're looking for this one in particular. Chris Brennan on the Astrology Podcast just released a huge episode tracking the history of the Mars-Uranus conjunctions in Gemini. So we're not going to try to be as exhaustive as like a 5-hour Chris Brennan episode. But suffice to say, this conjunction is massive. There will be things like when we're talking about the history books, we are talking about this. We don't know what it is yet. This scene has been set. We've got almost everybody. We have all the outer planets in aspect to each other. We've got Jupiter trining, at least by sign, Neptune and Saturn, opposing Pluto in a sextile with Uranus. And Uranus is going to conjoin Mars in Gemini. We got everybody except for the luminaries and Venus. Yeah, but she's in Leo, so she's not.
For this moment, I'm so glad she's not in Virgo. She just goes about to go in there, but
She's not there.
she's in Leo. In terms of the way things unfold, right? Like back in May when Uranus went into Gemini and we had that Mars Saturn conjunction, right? I think that this is carrying that thread to this space. I hope it's something as dumb as a stupid military parade, but I don't think so. It is also like the 250th anniversary of the United States, which people like to make a big deal about. So,
Yeah, so there will probably also be a big military parade. But yeah, as you said, we wish it was only going to be that. And then while there is a non-zero chance of that, it's highly unlikely given the evidence that we have about the repeating cycles in this area. If you were paying attention to the protests happening at the end of April, the protests that will happen in July, or what will happen to the protesters in July.
I mean, we've all been talking about polarization for so long now, but I'm like, because this is a year that is pivotal, because the nature of it just having to be an election season, being a kind of referendum on the administration, that's usually what midterms are. The summer is the peak fight of that. I think I was thinking of it as like the peak, like the summer of democracy and war, like that there's this battle. And so I think Mars then coming in on this Uranus, loudly proclaiming its individual selfhood and autonomy and things. It's going to be really loud for that. So if the news cycle has been stressing you out, there are just certain points this year where it's going to be extra stressful. And I think that this is a stressful news cycle, a stressful time where we have to drop in and go, okay, where are my values? Who am I? Because I think that
holding
with
on to
all
ourselves.
this fire and air, this is one of those peak moments where it's like you have to try to slow down, even though everything around you is just dialed up to 11. A lot of it's going to be at this out of our control, except for the only thing you ever have control of is your own reaction. If you can be the person that remembers that at this time, that'll be helpful. But yeah, this is one of those times that society will try to suck you into the undertow of polarization even further than it's been.
And it's in a sextile to Neptune and Aries. It's going to be confusing.
About to station retrograde, just a couple days. Think of it being really slow. It's really, there's an exclamation point, as you always say. There's an exclamation point on Neptune at the same time that we have probably the most explosive, arguably the most explosive aspect of the year.
In basically an exact trine with Pluto. And this is one of the moments where you really don't want a trine. We think of trines as helpful. They increase the flow of energy. They're of the nature of Jupiter. They make things bigger. We do not want the most explosive moment happening with a trine to Pluto and a sextile to Jupiter. So Jupiter and Leo can also turn everything into a pissing contest. We also do not want a pissing contest. But that's what we have. It's
dick energy.
This is huge dick energy. With Uranus, it's lost its ability to be constrained by the social mores and decency laws. We have lost our decency laws. But as Nicole says, we're holding on to who we want to be in our story, understanding we are not going to be able to control these things. But if we connect with our values, then we can hold on to our sense of ourselves, stay humble.
What's happening in our world is there are forces that are actively trying to manipulate the whole thing. And I think that's Neptune. And then Saturn will station retrograde later this month. So we have it ebbed a little bit with the separation of their big conjunction that happened in February. But maybe this is another moment where that February stuff may creep back up a little, because just from the fact that they're both stationing retrograde within like a couple weeks of each other. And we have this explosive energy coming in and trining and sex, all of this. So it's just good to remember too that the distortion field is real, and it may also be coming up, because I think one of the problems that we're really having right now is with all this AI stuff is just not knowing truth from reality, and people just instantly sharing things on social media, and it just spreads. And then Uranus and Gemini, that social media thing, I think the dangers of that get spread even more, at least until we start trying to figure out how to regulate a little. But we can't really know what to do until it's caused the disaster, unfortunately.
And I think that
Just
all of the Mercury retrogrades happening in water signs, right? Mercury is traditionally mute or said to be mute. It's not as verbal in water signs. So for it to be retrograde in Pisces during the first part of the eclipse season, and then for it to be retrograde in Cancer, right? It's like we're
yeah.
feeling so much. We're feeling the impact of so much, and we don't have the clarity of thought or mind, as you're saying.
Which is just like manipulator 101 if you've lived in those spaces before, which I have.
Yeah, let's find a time when you're already confused.
And then we're going to shock the system there and then turn it around and do what. So I would just be weary of in this time period, like, yes, there will probably be true atrocities happening. You're going to be triggered. You're going to want to stand up and say something. But at the same time, the fact that Neptune and Saturn are here and stationing, there is somebody pulling the strings somewhere. And just be mindful that your strings might be being pulled to
Mhm.
direct you into a particular place, which takes away your power and gives it to somebody else.
As we
Yeah.
as we get closer. But yeah, as you said, we get the Neptune station on July 7th. We get Saturn stationing on July 26th. So those kind of exclamation points. And then we also have the nodes fully changing signs at the end of July. Yeah, and Mercury stations direct at the end of July, and the nodes also change signs. So now we have the eclipses happening in new signs, and the nodes have joined them, which means for personal astrology too, you now have the nodes transiting different signs. I find even though it's the eclipses that trigger kind of momentous events, I think we feel the effect of the nodes. Now the North Node, wherever it is, it's wanting more of that. It's
Mm-hmm.
clearing out old stuff in the South Node house. And so we get this influx of Jupiter into Leo, and then a month later we get the South Node into Leo. So it's like both. And we are renovating the Leonine space. And it's going to take a little bit of time.
This is gonna be a big one for me. It's my nodal return, so it's in late
Ooh,
Aquarius, especially with
yeah.
Jupiter there in the South Node space. Like the South Node can just be to like bringing up innate things that like you didn't know about yourself innate, and so getting
Mhm,
the clarity about your strengths, especially in
mhm.
Leo with Jupiter there. That's nice.
And so they change signs. And then August, we have eclipses. And we're back into the eclipse season. Super nice though that Mercury got its retrograde out of the way, so we don't have those two things happening at the same time.
Yes, this time, yay.
We head into August. We get Chiron stationing retrograde at the first part, which I just think is potent in terms of everything that we just talked about because it's going to be stationing at 0 degrees of Taurus in a T square with that. Jupiter's going to be a little bit farther in by that point, but it's really emphasizing that, yeah, that need for the
The
medicine
need to,
or the
yeah,
wound of our collective disconnection from that
yeah, wound on the land.
medicine.
That
Yeah,
does what
a
you need.
wound on the land. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So August, we get eclipse season. We get solar eclipse in Leo at 20 degrees, right on my Venus.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, that is our first Leo eclipse.
Yeah,
Solar, so it's a new moon, it's a new beginning of some kind. It may harken back to the eclipses we were
Epiphany.
having there. You guys remember the first Great American eclipse that was in July of 2017,
Oh,
I believe,
right.
at the very
Yeah.
end. That one was a solar eclipse
Mm,
in, I think it was like 5 degrees of Leo. And so
that's
I think we
interesting.
probably had another one there in 2018.
Yeah.
2018.
Mercury's in the party in Leo. I think I said Mercury has a good
Yeah.
time because it like goes into Leo, so it's having fun, and then it conjoins Jupiter. Then it goes into its
Uh-huh.
domicile in
Yeah.
Virgo. So it's a good time for optimistic mental functioning.
We also get Mars into Cancer, so Mars is off
Yeah.
axis from all of that stuff. So in some ways that, I mean, it's still Mars, but that is nice to get it out of that tangle. We get Mercury clearing the post shadow of its retrograde on August 6th.
Venus goes into Libra, which is nice too.
Venus is
First.
way out ahead of the sun because she is the evening star, and by the end of the month, she's going to enter the pre-shadow of
Mm,
her upcoming retrograde, which she won't actually station until quarter 4. But this
mhm.
last month of quarter 3, she is in the pre-shadow. And also at the very end of the month, we get, well, yeah. So we're jumping around August a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
we get the partial lunar eclipse in Pisces. That's our last Pisces eclipse. That happens at
Yes.
4 degrees. We're done with Pisces eclipses. And then on the 31st, we get Jupiter trining Saturn. Which in some ways feels nice just because this is the first harmonious aspect they've had since their square. This is the exact of that in fire. So there's some exuberance and optimism. It may be misdirected, it may be misguided, it may be problematic in fire signs, but I'm leaning into joy where I find it. This is still my Jupiter return. Gotta have some good stuff.
I think all in all, like August, whatever we've gone through, maybe we've just gotten a little bit used to it or come to terms or we're working through it. But I think where this will ramp up though is, yeah, just in the past from like the Mars and Cancer, the very long retrograde that we had there, I noticed that there were points of temper tantrum type things happening in the air. And then with the eclipse happening in our rulers first, even though Jupiter's there. So yeah, I don't know. There could be, but it doesn't, all in all, it really doesn't seem as harsh as the beginning of the year eclipse. I think that's, yeah, I think it's good. Reasons to be happy in August.
Yeah,
And I'm thankful that the Venus doesn't enter her pre-shadow till August 31st, so I have a decent solar return for me.
nice.
So that'll be good. Birthday.
Yeah, Virgo season, birthday vibes. I'm waiting for a good solar return. Mine's not bad this for 2026. I get a Leo moon conjunct Jupiter in the first. So,
Okay.
yeah, got a Leo stellium in the seventh. It is. That is the way it is anyway. We're in the
Yeah.
pre-shadow of Venus's upcoming retrograde. That's a vibe shift. We have a full moon at the very end of the month, an Aries full moon conjunct Neptune. That's interesting. We get a Mars-Saturn square at the beginning, which is frustrating, but actually seems like that'll be good for slowing things down. Maybe there'll be
Yeah.
a tantrum, but crazy stuff won't be happening. We get Venus in Scorpio. I'm glad she doesn't move in until after my birthday so that she's in Libra for my solar return.
See?
There we
Someone's looking
go.
out for us.
Someone's looking out for us.
I see September is just like a build-up. We get a
Mhm.
bunch of shifts, right? I think this is where I said like, Mercury and Venus start to move in like lockstep with each other, but they're
Yeah.
like apart. But that's interesting. Again, interesting for financial things. That's why I would start to peek my head, like what's going on in the world there. But Chiron ingresses back into Aries September 17th. The sun moves into Libra. Mars moves into Leo. Mercury moves into Scorpio.
But
So it
those are
just
at
sort
the,
of like
yeah, but they're at the
at the
very end. Yeah,
end.
there's lots of ingresses. As you say, we're
Yeah.
building up, but we are out of eclipse season. There's no Mercury retrogrades. The lunations are not like crazy.
Maybe the one thing is that Uranus station retrograde,
Yeah, at
and it
five
is
degrees.
sextile to Neptune and trine to Pluto. Maybe that's just the sort of catalyst for the things that then end up building for the
Yeah.
end of the year.
One of the quietest months of
Hmm.
2026.
Maybe it's just we're all exhausted from this last eclipse cycle.
And we're all gearing up towards elections, which tend to, like, after the craziness of the summer, there's such a big lifestyle change that happens in September for everyone that has kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, September is crazy in terms of like all the schedules change. Maybe people are,
You know,
we're dealing with mundane.
the revolution can go on hold. I've got to figure out how I'm going to get my kid to school. They've made their move. it either worked to pull you in one direction or it didn't. No, I don't think anyone's going to head to these polls not knowing who they're voting for. I think that's just where we are in general in our lives, and it's been that way for many years. October may some surprise for us. That's what they always say, the October surprise. But I don't think September seems
Quiet.
Okay, quarter 3, 4. Goodness. 4. We made it.
We made it.
We're just going to keep moving forward no matter what happened. Yeah, quarter 4. Really, the big thing of quarter 4 is the Venus retrograde, because she was in her pre-shadow from the end of August all through September. And then, yeah, we're doing Venus retrograde things pretty much till the end of the year.
Yeah. Like, I think she doesn't clear it till December 13th.
Yeah, December 15th. Yeah, and then right there, so right on October 3rd, Venus stations
retrograde in Scorpio.
Yeah, she stations at about 8 degrees. She's going to retrograde back into Libra. So this is a Scorpio Libra. And it's such an interesting place for Venus to retrograde, because she's retrograding from the sign of her detriment into a sign of her rulership and back. And so there's these real big changes for Venus of whether she feels empowered or not.
This is definitely one of the ones where the end is significantly better than the beginning.
Yeah, in terms of what Venus is. Yeah, her power. And the midpoint, the Cazimi, happens in Libra, right? Am I wrong about that?
No,
I'd be wrong. It's October 23rd.
We gotta. Is it?
Yeah.
Nah, 0 Scorpio.
Oh.
So close. But she does go into Libra for that Taurus full moon, so that's okay. That's better.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. So it's, yeah, whatever. It's that Scorpio piece. It's a real visioning.
I think it's like Venus, there's so much intense emotion that is being processed, right? With Venus retrograde in Scorpio. And that kind of maybe characterizes the whole year. Like, we've gone through this year, and so it actually maybe feels natural for Venus to be like, I am exhausted. I cannot do this again. But this year was just so big, and we've got to process the.
Yeah. And it's almost like Venus, like remembering how to be Venus. I think about it in the context of trauma recovery, because Scorpio is a sign that is about power and having power over things and violating things in piercing ways where you get the answer you're looking for, even if it hurts. And in other ways where it can just be like the abuse of power. And so when I see Venus and Scorpio, she's really wrestling with the darker side of her nature and how she can use Venusian things as weapons, how she can be manipulative and sneaky and really like checking in, or even just how she can get in her own way and self-sabotage. And so that being in this dangerous place of Scorpio, or maybe she's not as careful with her own or other people's hearts. And then walking back to Libra and that space, that air sign where there is not this huge trauma bond that makes me feel like the same person, therefore I can do anything to you that I would do to me, Libra.
It's going down all the way down into that underworld as she's doing in this cycle. I feel, yeah, we're really going to get into it with these dynamics. And it's also just such like a, just in terms of like bigger, like zooming out, just like not a great time for women to feel particularly empowered in the true sense of the polarity, right? Like Venus, we never associate feminine or Venus with power, which is maybe why it's so tricky here in Scorpio, where we're like, okay, is our power in our sexuality, like in the way that we like femme fatale people around in society? There's really an overlay of a diminishment of allowing for feminine, allowing for spaciousness, allowing for mediation, allowing for compassion, allowing for other perspectives, which is what Libra is so good at doing. She can see all the sides of a situation, maybe to a point of indecision, but in its best, it just says, I understand your point of view. What a powerful thing that it would be to say that to each other. I don't agree with you. I understand your point of view. I understand the forces that are at play here that have pushed you into this perspective. Here's mine. Being able to listen to other people's perspectives non-judgmentally and without any objective of your own.
With the value of fairness at the core. And yeah, I think about Venus and Scorpio can be very possessive, being like, no, that's mine. That person is mine. You can't touch it. That person is mine. Or you have to, whereas Libra respects, it's not yours. Ultimately,
there has to be
for
space. Like
fairness,
it's not...
if Venus and Scorpio wants to have that mastery and wants to have that possession and is just forcing it and holding on so tightly, walking it back to Libra, if you love something, let it go. Because it's only from a place of mutual freedom can you really come together.
You have to allow a person to exist in a relationship. No thank you to 50 Shades of Grey or to Twilight Predator, I own you, that all consuming, which seems like maybe we would want that. You know, like it seems like it could heal some part of you that has just been far abandoned, but at some point it just becomes suffocating. Then it's not good to have no distinction between you and another person.
Because if that's true, then any difference that you come across threatens the relationship. And then you get really weird dynamics coming up.
I feel like reading the Prophet, Khalil, I can never say his name, Gibran.
Khalil.
Khalil Gibran. He talks about, I think he has a really wonderful chapter in the Prophet where he talks about marriage and unity being like two pillars, if that's like something that you're struggling with, like it was these heavy relational dynamics, running to poetry to sort it, express that and sort it out.
Yeah, and then also tuning into where you were in October of 2018, the last time we had this Venus retrograde in Scorpio and into Libra. This one is exact reflection of that.
That's okay. You have to sometimes. You gotta like process.
And Scorpio gives you the kind of like stalwartness, like I can go back.
Yeah. And I think that as far too, aren't we in a big Venus star point shift where we're going from 100, 250, how many years?
Yeah. I don't know exactly, but yeah, we did just have the first like Venus Sun conjunction in Libra rather than in Scorpio. My daughter was born on that like new Sun
that's Venus. Lovely. So hopefully, I haven't looked into the future, but
I think we get a few more because she tends to walk back like 2 degrees each one. Okay. So we're still at 8 degrees of Scorpio. So I think we have a few more, but eventually this is going to be just
a couple more years.
Yeah. Just
8 years.
Venus retrograde in Libra.
Yeah.
Within people's lifetimes, we will see there will be no more Venus retrograde in Scorpio for a long time.
After, like 4 or 5 more. That's good.
Cycle.
Yeah, cultural. Because I think like in the cultural scheme of things, we might be feeling a shift there.
Like day to day of 2026, we are still deep in there.
slogging through.
And it's going to be interesting as we sort it out because we'll also have Mercury retrograde in Scorpio overlapping with this. Mercury goes into the pre-shadow of their Scorpio retrograde on October 4th, so the day after Venus is stationing.
So they're in this like weird tandem conversation. So not
in different parts of Scorpio, though, I feel significant to note. Like they're not going over the same degrees, but they're in the same house in your chart. They're in the same themes. We get their conjunction on the 6th, like right after that. And this often happens because they're both very close to the sun, that they would be involved, but there is this kind of sorting through.
This is a third one I have marked down, that Mercury Venus conjunction. So I think we had one in Aquarius direct, one direct in Aquarius, one with Mercury retrograde in Pisces, and then this one.
That she was not involved in the Cancer one during the summer at all. And then, so we have a few of them. Here they're meeting in a cave of Scorpio. And Venus is like, I dropped my flashlight back there. Mercury, I'm going to go a little bit farther and then I'm going to drop my flashlight too. And then one thing about this Venus retrograde that we didn't have back in the 2018 one is we have Pluto in Aquarius, which means this retrograde squares Pluto. Actually, that one probably did too, but it would have been squaring Pluto between Libra and Capricorn, not between Scorpio and Aquarius. And so now we get this new iteration, which feels like it brings much more of this quest for freedom into it. And also this willingness to shatter the mold of, okay, if our whatever Venusian thing we're working on can't survive in this, do we just need a completely new form? And Pluto can be like, it's okay if this needs to be something that has never been before. Radically different.
And they both do it, like both Venus and Mercury square Pluto too. 3 times. So we're getting this. Yeah. That's like the biggest, maybe that's the biggest tension and the biggest question of the Venus retrograde, is that like conversation with Pluto. What are we smashing? I don't know. Like it's a square.
Yeah.
Like,
but that's funny because then that's also who's coming to smash down, which can also be part of a Venus retrograde. So Venus retrograde, they are changing the patterns of whatever we've decided was okay. Just trying to figure out, does it form 3 squares? Does Mercury form 3 squares to Pluto?
It might just form
Depends
2.
on the degree of Pluto.
Maybe I was looking at Mars. It does 2 squares with Mars. I know on the station, Mercury is squared to Pluto as part of the...
On the direct station.
On the direct station, it squares Pluto.
Yeah. Anyway, we will get into the nitty gritty of this when...
We're just doing like big themes. Yeah. We're not. There's too many things going on this year.
But yeah, so October, right? Very Plutonian, Scorpion. Venus is retrograde. Mercury is about to go retrograde. Venus does it for 40 days and 40 nights. It's like the astrological Lent happens. And a great way to move through it is to give something up for the Venus retrograde, to make the sacrifice that Venus is making. She has been the evening star. Now she is dying, going back into the sun, where she will be reborn as the morning star.
It's a very curious shifting. So that's October. And then when we get into November, it's going to enter the pre-shadow of its retrograde. So it's like towards the end of the year. And then once we get into the beginning of next year, whereas like this year, we kind of had Mars, Venus, but in a different way. Mars, morning star. Then the next year, we'll have Venus in her morning star. So that's just a curious passing of a baton too with this retrograde.
Mars is going to enter the shadow basically on election day for the midterm elections within a couple days. And that'll be potent, and Venus is going to be retrograde until she stations direct, like 10 days after election day.
So I was inspired by your assessment of all this 2018 vibe coming back. So I went back to the 2018 midterms. It was also that Venus retrograde, which we can see, and it was like the biggest gain, like the biggest, most historical gains for the opposing party that had happened since 1974, which was post Watergate Nixon. So I went back to 1974, and that was a Mercury retrograde in Scorpio into Libra. So this midterm election, we're getting both Venus and retrograde and Mercury retrograde. And in 1974, that was the first record of this historic gain for the opposing house, which makes sense because we had this huge Watergate scandal. Everybody is like totally disillusioned. Like, do the movies around that time were insane that were coming out of like just like high, like peak American cynicism. And then that is what carries into that election. Trump is like probably the closest. He's like Nixon on steroids or something in terms of like what he's doing, and like all of these like independent agencies that we put into place that are, we'll see if they survive that in April, June, early July time period. Those were all put into place because of Nixon all the way back then, and then potentially they're demolished again, and then we're here again. So as far as like in terms of the midterms, like I don't think we really fully knew what was going to happen till January because we had that like runoff election in Georgia. So I think having the Mercury retrograde here and the Venus retrograde, like it's just going to take a while, but ultimately both Venus and Mercury, when they station, or when Venus stations at 22 degrees of Libra, like we also have that awesome fixed star Spica right there. Spica is just, that's Virgo's star, and it's in Libra, and Virgo and Libra definitely have this like purity justice thing going on. So as far as if we were looking for some hope here, it might be a tangle. We might run into a lot of contentious issues later on. Early in the next year, there might be some nefarious things going on. It might be full of delay, but ultimately, I think we're going to see some really good, pure figures that are maybe finally, it might just be a handful. I have hopes for certain ones, but even if it is, I think that there at least will be some nice wins in terms of people we can trust to have our interests in mind, not their own interests in mind. So with the benefic, with Venus in her domicile near that nice, lovely fixed star.
And I think that we also get Mars conjoining Jupiter. Leo is fighting from the heart, from the heart for the heart. There can be a lot of exuberance to that. Potentially a grief cycle with Venus retrograde, but then Mars is no. Like, I am the hero. I'm together with Jupiter. Mercury is okay. I'm going to tell the truth no matter what happens. I'm going to square to Pluto. I don't care.
And then once those stations happen, things I think do settle down for the rest of the quarter.
We've got some outer planets stationing retrograde, right? Saturn, Neptune, and Jupiter all station retrograde in December. Venus leaves the post shadow on December 15th. And so we're out of that story. We're leaning into the next story of Mars getting deeper into its pre-shadow, where it's going to station retrograde in January of 2027.
We get some reception between Mercury and Mars
at the end of the year. Maybe we put it up there with June potentially.
So we don't get the squares next year.
Maybe some point, right? There's going to be like a grand fire of Mars and Saturn, Neptune. I think next year's holiday season maybe has potential for more exuberance.
Because I think at this point, whatever distortions Saturn and Neptune are throwing our way, we've been doing this since 2023. I just went back and listened to at least the first 2 hours of the Astrology Podcast Saturn Neptune episode, which is 8 hours long.
What a year we've had. It'll be so fun to recap this episode throughout the year with our forecasts and just get through it all together, because it really is like a year that moves us so emphatically into a new era, personally and collectively.
Nobody ever wants to live through this, but I think we're all ready for it too. I feel like I'm not ready for it in the sense that I'm ready. I know it's going to be chaotic and heavy, but just ready for a change. I think that's something that we're all in the same boat together. We are humans on this earth trying to live. We have this planet that it's a miracle that we exist. So we're all in this story together. And I think ultimately we all want the same basic things: food, shelter, water, space. We want that to work for ourselves, and work for each other in the same time. But it just requires a lot of change, because the system has to change. It cannot stay the same. I think we all feel that way.
Tensions are so high, right? There is we're in a thunderstorm and the polarities are getting so stretched that, okay, let's have some lightning bolts. And we don't get to pick where they fall. And I think is the scariest part of all of it. You don't know what the fallout can be. Winston Churchill said it's easier to get on a tiger than to get off of one.
That's a good one.
That's the human project anyway. We don't get to choose who we are in the story, except for in kind of rare moments. People will be transformed and there'll always be something to see, something to say.
Yeah. And it's always trended towards good and progress and innovation that helps us. If you do zooming out into that context, every era that we enter in is better than the one before in terms of quality of life. Most everybody can wear shoes now. Polio doesn't exist anymore. We've done some pretty good things for each other. It's just at every moment where we get these peak change, we have to fight and have a conversation about who is it for, who does it benefit, how do we do this.
And there are people that pay really high. People pay the price, and that is the thing. That's the hard part. And it's not evenly distributed. It's pretty classist. Who pays the highest price for things is devastating. And it's hard. It's hard to talk about these topics and the impacts that they're going to have on everyone in this way when we can't control it, and it feels crunchy to even predict it. But here we are.
It's our task to do for you all, is to try to help you prepare for this big, huge year of where everything changes.
And we'll be there throughout it with the monthly forecasts. You can also access with us for personal readings. Either
we're starting these full moon meetup groups, so if you would like, that'll be good. Yeah. I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Nicole, for being here with me and hanging in through multiple days of recording.
Yeah, we got through it though.
We got through it, and we will get through the year.
Yes, we will. All right. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to talk to you about all these big things in the language of astrology.
Likewise. Okay, I'll see you next month.
See you next month.